What's happening? What's up, everybody? We'll wait for everybody to get in here. Welcome to the live Q&A. Gonna have a good time. You guys gonna throw out some questions. We're also on YouTube right now. If you guys want to go to YouTube and go to the Shamanic Philosophy YouTube channel, you can check out the Wayfinder podcast on there. We're live right now. We're gonna make this a short one, not a full-length podcast today. Gonna run about 30 minutes. Gonna take some of your questions and keep this interesting, keep it moving. And then we're gonna bounce. It's gonna be a good time. What is up? Yeah, so first question, what's my zodiac sign? I'm a Virgo, right? So I'm told by a handful of astrologically inclined people that I am a pretty typical Virgo, you know. But I also understand that, there's a lot more that goes into your astrological configuration than just your sun sign, too. You got your mooning, your rising. And I think I'm a Sagittarius rising, and I can't remember my moon sign offhand. But I think that they, whenever I looked into it, they made a lot of sense, I think. So that's that. Next question. Hey, brother. Any advice to protect from negative entities during entheogen use? Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Protection from negative entities, negative spirits, and that kind of thing. First of all, is putting together a proper ceremony before you take part in any sort of entheogen session. So, I can tell you that I've had a couple of occasions where I didn't do anything ceremonially, and there's a reason why shamanic people all over the world have been doing ceremonies before they take different medicines for a while, right? So for thousands of years, they've always used ceremony to protect themselves and to guide themselves properly through these experiences. So proper ceremony beforehand, proper set and setting, proper diet, and personally, I also have jewelry and clothing that I prefer for ceremonies too. So whenever we do ceremonies, I try to go all in, right? So everything from essential oils, frankincense, and things like that. And I've got crystals that I like, for different uses. So I've got like a black obsidian palm stone that I use. It's a shamanic stone. Whenever I want to do shadow work, it brings to the surface a lot of deeply rooted things that might be difficult to reach, and it helps you gain control over those things and maintain control over those things. Negative entities are, from my experience and all of my reading and research and of course personal experience, they get in whenever you don't take proper steps to protect yourself. So really treating the ceremony with respect, treating the medicine with respect, and then treating yourself with respect when you go in. I also think it's important to, or I should say helpful to integrate the lessons that you learn between sessions, right? So if you have a session and you learn some lesson, or you're exposed to some knowledge or some wisdom from the medicine, if you don't integrate those lessons and then you come back to the medicine later, weeks, months, whatever, and you haven't integrated those lessons into your life and progressed in growth in some way, it's pretty likely that you're going to be confronted by some sort of negative entities that are going to feed on that vacuum of growth. There's going to be a growth vacuum there, and those entities will find that place and they will dig in, and it's hard to get out of that once it happens. You can do it, but it's not a fun thing to do. And having a religious backbone, I'm not going to tell you what religion to have, because there are a lot of different ways you can approach it. But I think you should have a religious practice in your life if you're working with plant medicines. Every shamanic culture around the world has some sort of religious context that they use to guide themselves through these experiences. So I've encountered powerful negative entities on some trips and called on Jesus and Horus and Thoth and other entities to get me through some of those tough times. The Archangel Gabriel and Michael. So, that's one of the things that I'm starting to really appreciate more and more is having, the more I develop my spirituality, I'm not just developing it as a vacuous individual experience for me. It's also a religious experience. So I'm also integrating ritual into my life and a relationship with the angels, with the gods, whatever you want to call them. These positive beings of protection and love and guidance. I think having a relationship with them makes a huge difference when you come into these experiences. Good question. Let's see. What's our next question here? Different healing effects of mushrooms, peyote, and ayahuasca. Well, they're all different. And I get this question a lot. So, like, LSD is not on that list. DMT is not on that list. But the bottom line is that all medicines and all these different entheogens have different applications and different uses, and you have different uses depending on the dose, right? So if you take a 1 gram dose of mushrooms, it's a whole different experience than taking a 5 or 6 gram dose of mushrooms. Same with anything else, except for maybe ayahuasca. You just do a lot of ayahuasca, and you're gonna have you don't take little bits of ayahuasca. It's kind of pointless. In my view, the same thing is true with peyote and San Pedro, the mescaline stuff. Mushrooms for me are the most healing. I think, and I've never taken peyote or ayahuasca, although I will be taking some San Pedro later this year, hopefully. Working on that. I don't want to give any more information than that obviously, but mushrooms are very self-reflective at a deep level, just to kind of give you some kind of an answer to that question. So mushrooms give you a lot of deep reflection, and LSD kind of gives you an outward reflection on your life, on the world, on things and how they're interconnected. Mushrooms are deep, man, and they're cosmic, and they sort of, I don't know, they point you inward. LSD seems to point you outward. It's hard to explain, but I could talk on that topic alone for a really long time, and maybe here in a minute we'll come back to that. So just remind me. Let's see. But obviously the native people of the southwestern U.S. and stuff, they've used peyote for guidance and vision quests and things like that. Okay, let's see. Any specific ceremony? No, not any specific ceremony as far as talking about the for psychedelics use and sessions and stuff. You don't have to do anything super specific, but it needs to be specific to you and understood by you and whoever you're taking the medicine with. So usually I would say it needs to involve smoke of some kind, preferably burning sage and particularly sage to clear out the bad stuff. And just get the smoke going, get the bad spirits out, get the negative entities cleared out of the space. I like having campfires. Campfires are good. They give you a kind of a focal point or a fixation point, and flames can be really insightful on a psychedelic trip. Clothing, I think, does matter. The color of it, what it's made of. Your jewelry and crystals matter. Praying to the divine or to some sort of sovereign entity, whatever it is that you acknowledge or appreciate. So invoking the spirit of the divine into the space where you're going to be taking part in the ceremony, and making sure that you're prepared properly with food and stuff like that, particularly with really with all of them, but particularly with the plants. LSD is not quite so much the problem from what I've seen, but mushrooms really don't like dairy products. They don't like red meat, and you're really likely to get sick if you take a lot of red meat or dairy products whenever you take mushrooms. So if you just want to fast and feed yourself fruits and veggies all day long, like raw fruits and veggies, on the day of a mushroom trip, which is where most of my experience is with psilocybin, which is my favorite plant medicine. Fruits and veggies are really the way to go, as far as I'm concerned. All day long, fruits and veggies. You can do a cleanse the night before if you want to, but ceremonially, it's really just about getting your mind right and clearing the air of anything negative. Let's see what else we got. Off the grid, what's up, man? Next question. Are the darker entities already within us? Yes. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. These we are all fractal incarnations of God or source consciousness or the fractal binary self-replicating algorithm that makes up all things. We are all just little fractal representations of that one pure source made up of good and evil. A lot of people like to think of God as a purely positive thing, all love, light, and understanding and all that stuff. I call that Christ. I call the opposite Satan. And God is actually the yin and the yang. It's both. And within us, we have, everyone has the same capacity for evil, you, me, and Hitler. And everyone has the same capacity for good, unless you have some sort of biologically malformed, situation where you have a tumor on your amygdala or something like that. But we all have the same, all humans have the same general capacity for good and evil. So, when I feel fear and you feel fear, obviously there's different levels of fear. But in my scale, if I'm feeling like level 5 manic terror and you're feeling that same thing, we're feeling the same thing, right? We have the same capacity and range of emotions and potential sensory perceptions of the outside world, and the way that we process it is all pretty similar. So these entities that we can encounter that are made up of fear or envy or jealousy or self-loathing or whatever, these things exist within us, and they can come to the surface during these trips whenever we're particularly vulnerable. But just as we can be particularly vulnerable, that vulnerability comes from a place of exposure. Oop, trying to fix my tripod. Hold on. There we go. That's a little bit better. So the vulnerability comes from a place of exposure, but in that place of exposure, with the right religious outlook, with the right spiritual armor and weaponry, you can win just as many battles as you can lose. And I would say when you really go in there equipped, I mean, you can pretty much be guaranteed you're not going to lose any battles once you've been down that road enough times, But if you backslide and screw up, then that's a different story. I've had some rough ones. But yes, the negative entities the dark entities are within us. It's all within us. Everything's within us. The whole world is within us. Okay, next question. That was a good question, by the way. Are some mountains really giants? How can we spread more awareness and break out of the matrix? Also, how can the people come together and overcome the government? So that's 3 questions. I'm going to do 1 or 2 of those. Are some mountains really giants? I don't know, man. People talk about these mud fossils and stuff, and I have no idea. I'm open to all kinds of crazy stuff, but I don't see the evidence for it. Really? I don't see it in mythology. I don't really see it in a lot of the pictures I see of these mountains. I've been to a lot of these mountains where a lot of people take pictures and say that this is like a titan of the past that fell down and died, and his body became a mountain or a mountain range or something like that. And a lot of the pictures that you see online are like, and I've taken some of these pictures just for fun, but if you look at the pictures, they look like a person laying on the ground, and it's a mountain. But you go to that mountain, and it's like you have to stand exactly where that person was when they took that picture, or it doesn't look like a person. You know what I mean? So a lot of that stuff doesn't stand up to me. But I have no problem with it. I just haven't seen the evidence for it personally. It's not been compelling to me. How can we spread more awareness and break out of the matrix? Talk to friends and make friends, build a tribe, spread the word on social media. The biggest thing is just living in truth, man. Live in truth. Live a healthy, happy, uplifting, positive, selfless life as much as you can. Work on your own bullshit, face your own shadow, own your own garbage, and take it out daily. And try to enhance your life and be an example for people instead of, a lot of people in the so-called conscious community are kind of out there living a certain way and judging other people for living a different way or whatever, or they're just trying to make conscious memes or whatever they're trying to do. But the reality is your change starts within you, and then it spirals out from there, through these concentric rings of influence that you have in your life, which essentially become a spiral. And it's you at the middle of it, and then you and your significant other if you have one, and then your kids after that, and then your extended family, and then maybe your workplace, your community, all that stuff. And I'm seeing a huge change over the last several years in the conscious community, a massive growth, a surge of growth. But that's a good question. We break out of the matrix and become more aware and spread the word by doing the internal work on ourselves first and foremost. That's how we do that. Good question. All right, let's see what else we got. What is our next question? You guys keep the questions coming. Keep the questions coming. By the way, like I said, we are on the YouTube channel right now. I think we're live on YouTube. My producer's not here, so it's just me. So JC is absent. Let's see. Other questions. What do we got? Man, I'm way behind. Just took some time to meditate. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, meditation's a good thing, man. I don't know if you guys meditate, but meditation's a really cool thing. Sitting alone with your thoughts and just becoming aware of the emotions that you feel, becoming aware of your breathing. These are really powerful things to do. And I always say that it all starts with becoming aware of your breathing. Once you become aware of your breathing and you go through conscious breathing exercises, slowing down your breathing, focusing on your in breath, hold it, focusing on your out breath, and make those counts last as long as you can. Do like a 4 count in, hold it for a couple seconds, do a 4 count out. It's not a specific science. It's about what you're comfortable with. My biggest thing was I would always get, I've got ADD and my brain's all over the place. So I would sit and try to meditate, and then I would start breathing, and I'm like, man, I'm rushing through my breaths. I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in, and then 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out. When you get distracted and my heart's beating, my lungs are pulsating, and I'm getting distracted and I can't really do it. So the big thing is focus on the count of the breaths. Focus on that count and make it go as slow as you can. So it's 1, 2, 3, just really try to drag out your counts and make that the game that you're playing. Make that the game that your body is focusing, or that your brain's focusing on. And it'll help remove a lot of those distractions. And once you get to the point, and I think you will, most people will pretty quickly, with once you get to the point that you're able to sit in the quiet and become aware of your breath, your body becomes less of a distraction. Your thoughts become less of a distraction. There's different kinds of meditation, but mindfulness meditation is good. Witness meditation is good. There's lots of different kinds, and they all serve different purposes, just like all these other tools. So we're talking about psychedelics and meditation and personal growth. If you guys are missing it, am I a vegan? No, I am not a vegan. I have a similar diet, try to maintain a similar diet to shamanic people of the past. I eat some meat that's responsibly sourced. I eat a lot of fruits and veggies, and I do juice raw veggies and fruits. Drink lots of water. But more power to the vegans. Ascension is in the channel. There's my queen. You guys go follow ash.ascension. Hottest, smartest, funniest, most awesome chick on Instagram. And uplifting on top of that. What do you know about adrenochrome? Man, I don't want to talk about adrenochrome. There are some people that think that the elite of the world do terrible things to people, and they take, ceremonially do terrible things to people, and then they extract this hormone called adrenochrome out of them, and they use it as a drug to get high, like an adrenaline type thing. I don't really like getting into that stuff. It's not where I like to vibe, but it's a valid question, and there's lots of places where you can go to get that information. All right, let's see. What other questions we got? Hey there, when I was listening to trance and realized that there is a God, as soon as I realized and just said that, people became people's eyes became black. What does that mean? Reason behind those black eyes. I don't know, man. The black eyes, there's something to the black eyes. I'm not sure I fully understand exactly what the context is that you're describing, but there is something about demonic black eyes. So maybe the trance music you were listening to is not ideal. I recommend Trevor Hall. I just keep saying that, but yeah, I used to listen to a lot of trance, even whenever we would take mushrooms and stuff. It's not all bad, but anything that I would ever do, if it made everybody's eyes turn black, that is not a good thing. So I would get away from that. That's just my 2 cents. So, all right, next question. Ever look into Paul Stamets' work? Yeah, I'm actually trying to get Paul on the podcast. He's a hero of mine. For you guys who don't know who Paul Stamets is, he's a mycologist, which means that he is a mushroom expert. And he is a tremendous dude. He's very smart. He's been working with mushrooms for like 40 years or something since he was in college. And he's done a lot for the proliferation of mushrooms and the information of mushrooms. He's written books on them. He's got groweries. He did a great podcast with Joe Rogan. You guys could check out. Paul Stamets is his name. He's in the chat. You can see his name. But I definitely recommend checking Paul Stamets out. Awesome guy. He's got some really cool stories to tell about mushrooms. Really cool stories, talking about time travel and shit, but in a credible way. Not time travel, but like clairvoyance maybe, or foresight while on mushrooms. So go check out Paul Stamets. All right, Jenna, on DMT, I've had a body death and met the insect beings, but how do you know when you break through? Well, that's pretty hardcore. I mean, to have a body death, I guess maybe you mean an ego death, what I would call an ego death, what a lot of people call ego death, and you met the insect beings. Well, you broke through, and once you get to the point where you're meeting other entities and talking with the aliens, you've broken through. A lot of people don't meet the entities. So once you start interacting with other beings, you have broken through. Is it normal to have a DMT trip and not remember much? Yeah, because your brain just can't handle that shit. It's crazy. It is normal to have a DMT trip. If anyone ever came back from a DMT trip and remembered anything substantial, I would think they were fucking lying. It's too hard. There's too much craziness going on in a DMT trip for you to really remember what happened, because you can't describe it. It's like Terrence McKenna had talked about meeting some of the entities there, and they came to him like self-dribbling jeweled basketballs that were speaking to him by rearranging the geometric structure they were made of and expressing words to him through or thoughts and feelings to him through the movement of their colorful geometric shape and nature. I mean, how do you describe this shit? You can't. And there's very little that I can describe about DMT trips. Thoughts on cellular intelligence mentioned by Paul Stamets on the Joe Rogan podcast. Cellular intelligence, the idea that the cells... okay, so that's the question. What are my thoughts on cellular intelligence? It was mentioned by Paul Stamets on the Joe Rogan podcast. So the idea is that your cells have a sense of intelligence and know kind of what to do. And this is... I don't remember. I didn't see that whole podcast, I don't think. I watched a bunch of clips from it. But I'm pretty sure that's coming from the Rupert Sheldrake idea of morphic resonance, and the idea that all of everything down to our cells and even the bacteria in our body and the everything that exists has a morphic field, and that there is some sort of blueprint that has been endowed by the Creator into that being, and it just knows how to act, and it knows how to grow, and cells just know how to act, and they know how to grow, they know how to interact with each other. And so I mean, I think that you ought to look into morphic resonance with Rupert Sheldrake. And if you guys don't know who Rupert Sheldrake is, he's like one of the most important scientific minds of all time, in my view. And I think that the idea of morphic resonance will one day be something that will be like as important as gravity. He'll be like an Einstein in the future. He's a genius. So check out Rupert Sheldrake. He's written some cool books on science. He's a majorly influential dude in my life. Love the way that you answer questions. Very well put out platform. Man, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you like it. I was a little bit worried about doing this live, honestly, because I've got the whole studio thing going on here, and JC, my producer, is not here. So, look. So I've got all the doodads going on, and nobody to like help make sure that things are working. So I'm glad it's working out. I'm glad that you guys are having a good time. I'm having a blast. Yes, this is a podcast. You guys can go to the YouTube channel, and I hope that you do go to the YouTube channel and subscribe, because we've been working through them. We got the studio built. We finished the studio last month, and we're here in Dallas, Texas, and you can see it's a beautiful studio. We're really happy to have it. But man, it has come with like just non-freaking stop technical issues, just getting all this stuff going, because we really wanted to do it right. So now we've got it done as of this week. I think that we're in good shape. And we're going to have some guests in here. We're going to do Skype interviews. We're going to do music. We've got musicians and artists and authors and professors and all kinds of cool people, and then other Instagram influencers and stuff like that, social media influencers that are in the conscious community, people that have things to say that you guys would want to hear. And so if you subscribe on YouTube, go to the Shamanic Philosophy channel, and it's the Wayfinder podcast. And if you go to iTunes, it's the Wayfinder podcast. It's easy to find. And we'll have a lot of cool stuff. And I normally would have Howard and JC in here with me, and those guys are awesome too. Moving right along. Next question. Any thoughts on the frequency within music, 432 hertz? Yeah, I mean, I know that people talk about the 432 hertz being a thing. Like it's I haven't done the scientific work myself, but there's no doubt that certain frequencies have a calming effect on you. And if you guys have looked into like cymatics and acoustics, and you've looked at the vibrational, like the vibrational forms that sound waves can create, like if you have like a 432 hertz sound on like a metal sheet with sand all over it, and like you blast a 432 hertz sound through that metal sheet, the sand will arrange itself into these beautiful structures and stuff. And you can see what disharmonic sound and what harmonic sound looks like. And there's no question that songs do this. Meditation mantras and stuff like that will do that. The Om, stuff like that. So the 432 hertz is one particular frequency that a lot of people say it's a very special frequency. I listen to 432 hertz, like meditation, call it music or whatever when I sleep, but it's not really music, it's just vibrational tones. Have you seen what Alex Jones said about interdimensional vampires? If so, do you believe it's true, or is he just crazy? Well, I mean, it's it's kind of an oversimplification, but yeah, I think there are interdimensional vampires. Yes, Alex Jones is like really fucked up in a lot of ways, and like he's not maintaining a good balance between the real world and an understanding of what exists outside of this material world. But like a lot of the things he says are rooted in some kind of truth. There are, we call them interdimensional vampires or whatever, but like we exist, angels exist. There are other beings that exist. If you've ever done DMT or mushrooms or something, you know that there's other beings in other realms that exist. And there are energy vampires that exist, that are entities that exist outside of the realms that we can see with our normal five-sensory problem-solving state of consciousness. And so he's not totally off his rocker. And I don't want to endorse anything Alex Jones says, but that particular item, I've heard him say that, and that's not a bad way to put it. Well, it's a bad way. No, it is a bad way to put it. It's not a bad idea. It's just a really bad way to put it. Good question, though. Do I believe in God? Absolutely. Absolutely. God, as I always define it, is a binary fractal self-replicating algorithm that makes up all things. So it's the source code of the universe, and it literally is and is in all things. And we are little fractal representations of God experiencing itself. God is both male and female, the yin and the yang, the twin dragons, the masculine and feminine, light, dark. And how we find the balance of God in our lives is the answer to our happiness, and really the thing that determines where we sit and where we finish. Let's see. Next question. Someone says, I might join the military. I don't want to, but I feel it's the best to move forward. How can I find my true path and keep consistent and follow through with it? Ooh, that's complex. I don't know where you're at in your life, you know? I don't like to tell people what to do, but I would say that, you know, unless you're living under a bridge, joining the military is probably not your best route to finding your true path, you know? Fighting in wars and carrying weapons to shoot at people you've never met to, you know, benefit the bank accounts of rich elite people who don't give a shit about you. It's probably not anyone's. I don't think it's honestly it's anyone's best route forward. But not to dog out any military people, because I don't think anybody joins the military with that in mind. But I have a lot of friends who've been in the military and know a lot of people through Instagram and other stuff who've been in the military, and I just don't think it's the way to go. Knowing what I know and what a lot of people know, it's not the best way to go. So, yeah, someone sort of answers and says, ask the universe. Yeah, I mean, that's it. You know, take up a spiritual path in your life. Take up a spiritual path. Start meditating. Start praying. Find your flavor of God that makes the most sense to you, that uplifts you the most, and it's most consistent with a proper value, a proper natural value set. Get out into nature. And start asking yourself the questions of, like, what do you want out of life? Where are your values? And then build your priorities around your values. And then take action. You know, we've all heard about, you know, dreams that are written down become goals. Goals with steps become a plan. You know, a plan with action becomes reality or whatever. You know, it's like just take the steps to build the reality that you want to create. But first, you need to know what that reality looks like. And that means that you've got to do some self-analysis. And a lot of people don't really know how to do that. It's kind of what I want to help with, and a lot of other people want to help with. But you know, learn to meditate, learn to pray, and we'll do more discussion on that kind of stuff here on the podcast. It's a question I get a lot, so I just need to do more on that. But hold off on the military. just one man's opinion. All right, let's see what else we got. What's the difference between brain and mind, and how are chakras related to consciousness? What a badass question. What a good question. So what is the difference between the brain and the mind, and how are the chakras related to consciousness? So first question, difference between the brain and the mind is that the brain is a meat sack in your head that has a bunch of neurons and blood and other stuff in it, right? Different parts that we can label on a piece of paper. That's what your brain is. Back to Rupert Sheldrake, you know, and a lot of others, you know, a lot of people have the idea that the brain is not the originator of consciousness, but it's a receiver of consciousness, and that your brain's almost like a radio, right? Like your radio is not it doesn't have a little person talking or singing or playing drums inside of it, right? It's a radio, but it's made to pick up a signal that's coming in from somewhere else, and based on if it's tuned to an AM frequency or an FM frequency, or if it's at, you know, 99.1 frequency on the FM dial, you can dial your radio into that frequency. So I think that our brains are that way. Our brains are essentially a radio receiver that pick up consciousness that's being streamed from somewhere else. And again, a lot of work with psychedelics will show you this, because psychedelics can, neuroscientists have told us now, we know that the brain is more of a filter than it even is a receiver. So it is a receiver, but it's got tons of filtration systems in it that keep a lot of sensory input out. Right? So we have five senses, and we can hear, smell, taste, touch, all that stuff. But on psychedelics, all those filtration mechanisms break down, like especially on a big enough dose of something like mushrooms, you know. You just get bombarded with this fire hydrant of information from every angle, and you realize that the mind is actually deeper than the brain, and it may have a house or a home inside the brain, but it's not a physical home. It's probably some seat of consciousness, some chair that it sits in, like the pineal gland or something. But the mind is sort of the it's sort of the little spark within your brain that is who you are. It's the one that thinks, right? And you are both the sufferer and the witness at the same time. So the brain's a meat sack. If you destroy the radio, you destroy your ability to hear the music, right? So if you blow your brains out, something bad happens, you get run over by a car. The receiver is destroyed, but the mind flows back into the ocean from which it came. The chakras relating to consciousness, man. Golly, I could talk about chakras forever too, but I'm not gonna. Aligning your chakras is important. All the chakras have different um, uh, different importance to your consciousness and to your body, and blockages will affect different things about your life, right? If you have a throat chakra blockage, you won't speak your mind as much, or you may not sing if you want to be a singer. If you have a root chakra blockage, you may walk around not, being afraid or being uneasy or being anxious, because the root chakra is associated with grounding and safety. It's sort of the most primitive of the chakras, and so represented by the planet Saturn, obviously, and having a root chakra blockage can make you afraid. Even if you don't realize you're afraid, it can make you afraid to make change in your life happen, right? Which I could just go off on a tangent on that. Like, our whole society is built around people who just sit at desks all day long and don't do anything. And they end up with these root chakra blockages because they're not moving and they're not twisting and they're not being active and, moving their hips and their pelvis. And so they end up getting these muscular and skeletal blockages in their root chakra. And that doesn't just impact their ability to walk and run and move and twist and jump and do acrobatics, but it actually, as within, so without. So you have a chakra blockage of a certain kind. It's going to affect how you think, how you act, how you feel. And you can do some research into chakras and see what all the different associations are between the chakra centers and the different feelings and thoughts and stuff like that. But chakras have everything to do with consciousness. We are made up of our, whether you call it seven. There's different ways of looking at it, different models of thought. But the chakras definitely all have something to do with our consciousness. And you have Kundalini energy that spirals up from your root chakra in a big swirling snake, and it is what impacts how that life force, how that prana, how the chi flows through your body. 2 seconds, guys. So yeah, chakras are a big deal. You should know about it. Next question. Do you think the Egyptians or last civilizations knew about the true powers of the pineal gland? Man, I think it's totally true. I mean, I think it's totally not just possible, but probable that the Egyptians and a lot of other civilizations knew about the pineal gland and what it does. I mean, we don't really know what the pineal gland does, but we have some pretty good ideas, and I think that the Egyptians definitely understood it. There are some really interesting. There's some engravings, but then there's some stuff on some scrolls, some writing on some scrolls where there's pictures of the human brain, but it's drawn out symbolically as a tree of life. It was their tree of life, but it's the human brain, and it's pretty clear. It's the human brain they were drawing, and there's the Egyptian god of wisdom, Thoth, is like showing, one of the pharaohs or something. He's pointing to a place on the tree of knowledge, like where the memories are or something like that. And you out of here?
Yeah, I'm out.
Howard's leaving, guys. Okay. Peace out, man. We'll see you. He was too busy to come in here and talk with us, but he's out now. So, the Egyptians demonstrated that they had, if you look at the picture of that tree of life and where they're pointing to on it to show the pharaoh where the memories of the past are, it's the same part of that tree that he's pointing to is actually where we now know in like the rear left lobe of the brain where memories are stored. So there's no question that the Egyptians had an insane working knowledge of. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Making sure I have my keys because everybody around here supports me in my forgetfulness. They know that it's very likely I wouldn't have my keys and be able to let myself out because they love me. So yeah, the Egyptians knew about the brain, and then there's the whole Eye of Ra connection. You guys have seen that, the cross section of the brain with the pineal gland in the middle and the Eye of Ra being a model for that. If you look at a picture of the Eye of Ra and a cross section of the brain, you could even Google that Eye of Ra brain comparison, and it's pretty clear to me that the Egyptians knew that they knew a lot about what the brain could do, and they venerated the pineal gland. They had a reverence for the pineal gland, it seems to me. All right, next question. Great questions, by the way. You guys are the best. Keep these coming. I'm going to stay on here for, I don't know, another 10 minutes or so and ask questions, and then I'm going to get out of here. All right, let's see. I'm starving. What are your thoughts on dreams, whether they are just that, perhaps times from a past life that were of too much importance and were embedded into the soul, or scenarios from the future? This is a really complex one. It's a great question. I have actually discussed this a lot with a lot of people. I've got some theories, none of which have I been able to cohesively explain yet. But I do think that there's a good chance that dreams that we have are other timelines. There are other timelines of things that are happening at a different level of consciousness. Even the things that don't make sense, I think, could be other timelines where our consciousness is residing, and things are happening at, our consciousness is multi-layered. I'm pretty certain of that at this point. And we are operating consciously in the forefront of our consciousness. We're sitting here having this conversation, but at other layers of our consciousness, we're not. We're doing other things. There's like whole other, lives and activities going on in here. And when we have dreams, we may see something happen, and we think it's just some random amalgamation of memories and thoughts and just random, neurological firings and all that. But I've been to some places, on mushrooms particularly, where I've seen how that dream world works, and I even came back not exactly knowing how to explain it, although I could have explained it better immediately after than I can now. But looking into the work of Edgar Cayce, what I saw on mushrooms was nearly identical to it virtually was identical to what he explained about the dream world and how dreams work and stuff like that. So it's tough to talk about this stuff, but I do think that dreams are, at least a lot of dreams are real things in some way or another, just that are happening at different levels of consciousness. Good questions. Let's see what else we got. So someone says, the DMT experience seems to be based on your own subconscious mind because what you see is geared towards you. Would you agree? Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that what the best that we've come up with in our sort of tribe is that DMT seems to give you what you're looking for, give you what you're prepared to accept. So if you go in there afraid, you could have a kind of a frantic, crazy experience. If you go in there, with a presence of mind and a state of solidarity within your own mind, body, and spirit, and you kind of go in there with the right intentions, looking for love and enlightenment and beauty, you can get that back out of it. It's kind of like you almost go into the mirror, and you reach in and it gives you back out what you're looking for. Your intent seems to be the only thing that you have control of on a DMT experience, and that intent is your steering wheel, and it'll steer you through that experience in a positive or a not so positive way. But typically it's positive if you're doing the right stuff. I would agree with that. Let's see what we got. This is some great content, dude. Really enjoying everything. Man, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. Are we born unknowing or are we born knowing all? That's a good question. Very philosophical, very deep. I would say that there's something interesting that happens when we're born, and I think that it's kind of like when you wake up from a dream and then you start trying to talk about the dream, and the more you talk about it, it vaporizes quickly as you're trying to explain it to someone, right after you wake up. You're like, man, I had this crazy dream. And you can remember it so vividly in your mind in that moment, but then you start explaining it, and it just vaporizes as you're trying to explain it. And there's something about our babies, when babies are born, they're still connected to source in some really interesting way. It's like they just come out of this cosmic water slide into this new biological incarnation, and it's like they just slid down the DMT pipe, and they're just like coming out like, holy shit, where am I at? What's going on? And a lot of them seem to have a connection to the past, to where they came from, or to whatever. And it's like the older they get quickly in life, if you think about the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years of your life, a very short, very quick span. As they get their bearings in this world, they lose their connection to wherever it was they came from. And whatever was happening there. So, yeah, I mean, I think in a sense we're sort of born, maybe not knowing all, but we're born with a more freshly wiped memory, and sometimes it's maybe not even fully wiped, but just, you know, by nature of living in this world, this world seems to wipe that memory out, and that connection. It's probably things that you can do to try to keep that, from happening somewhat, but I'm not sure. Thoughts on hypnosis? Next question. Good question, by the way. Thoughts on hypnosis type therapy or meditation? So we talked about meditation a minute ago. Hypnotherapy, it's cool. I mean, if you get a good hypnotherapist, it works. Depends on what you are trying to do, but if you want to engage past traumas and stuff like that, it's very helpful, because the forefront of our consciousness, our conscious mind, gets in the way of doing deeper subconscious digging. So meditation can help with that tremendously, but hypnosis can take you even deeper than meditation, especially with a good hypnotherapist, and you can really dig in deep into like past life regression or past trauma therapy and stuff like that. So hypnosis is a neat thing, but you got to be willing to let somebody crack your mind open. Not everybody's cool with that. Good question though. Next question is, was there a real Jesus, or was Jesus a mushroom? I actually think there was a real Jesus, and I think he took a lot of mushrooms, and I think all of his tribe around him took a lot of mushrooms, and he happened to be a smart enough, charming enough, just a well-placed guy with some woke-ass parents, and he was raised in the right household, and he went off and changed the world. Terrence McKenna has talked about this. Every so often you have some 30-year-old, dude that just has the right sort of eclectic, comprehensive education that's open-minded in the right ways and educated or informed in the right ways, and he's charming in the right ways, and he's whatever, and he's able to come along and he tries to change the world, or he does change the world. And this seems to be a recurring theme, and I think that that happens cyclically. And Jesus was the most recent incarnation of that kind of thing. I think the Buddha was another one. Horus of Egypt was probably another one. So yeah, but I also think that if you read The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by John Marco Allegro, Food of the Gods by Terrence McKenna, I don't think Jesus was a mushroom, but I think that at the core of his message was the mushroom. And it wasn't just Jesus that was going around doing that at that time. There was all of his disciples, but there was like Apollonius of Tyana, which was Jesus's like exact contemporary. He was Jesus's age. He was going around preaching at the same time. And the mushroom seems to be the core of that gnosis, of that knowledge. It was giving people mushrooms at a big dose, particularly, can give you a deep connection to the God that all these religions purport to worship and purport to have a connection to and to get their messaging from. Mushrooms can give you a direct connection to that all-encompassing, all-existing love and light and understanding of all things. A lot of people come back from a big mushroom trip, their first one, and they're like, holy shit, oh my God, this is the God that I always heard about in church. This is the experience that I always imagined, best case scenario, that a human being could have with the infinite. And it is identical to having the most profound experience with Christ that you can imagine. So I think that mushrooms were an important part of Jesus' message. And that's why there is so much symbolism throughout the Bible and other texts about psychedelics, particularly mushrooms. Good question. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to give this just a minute. All right. Will use AI on the drawing of the brain to get a better understanding? Will you use AI on the drawing of the brain to get a better understanding? I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand that. I'm going to keep moving. You ever been to Native American ceremonial lodges, peyote gatherings, etc.? I've been to Native American ceremonies in the past, never a peyote gathering or a sweat lodge, although I intend to. We've visited a lot of Native American sites around the country and spent time with the elders and talked with them about spirituality and stuff, and never had the opportunity to do that, to go to a peyote ceremony or something like that. But we are working on that. That's something we're actively working on. It's a good question. I think that that'd be a tremendous experience. All right, let's see what we got. Thoughts on ayahuasca? Same as everybody else, man. It's just something that, it's a, I don't even know where to start with ayahuasca. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Hundreds of thousands of plant species in the jungle, and they happen to find the two plants that work together to take you on a trip to another universe. And you're guided by spirit beings who are in charge of the earth, and often run into Mother Ayahuasca herself, who appears to be, for all intents and purposes, the guardian of the earth. So it's a big deal. Ayahuasca is a huge thing. Psychotria viridis and Banisteriopsis caapi, the two different plants, the vine of souls and the other thing, the leafy thing. It's actually the leafy thing that has the DMT in it. It's actually the ayahuasca vine has the monoamine oxidase inhibitor in it, so you can make it orally active. So it's tremendous. All right. So yeah, great conversation, guys. I'm going to get out of here because I'm starving, and I just wanted to come say hi to you guys. It's been a long week, and just wanted to talk to you all and see how everything was going. So please go to the YouTube and subscribe, share this video, tell your friends and family and all your loved ones and all other truth seekers and curious folk about the Shamanic Philosophy channel on Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff. The Wayfinder podcast is lifting off as of, I'm guessing, next week, now that we have everything in order. So love you guys very much. Wish you all the best. Remember YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, all that stuff. iTunes and YouTube particularly. Really appreciate you guys. So yeah, go out there and have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. May the light be with you. May peace be within you. May you be a sun on the paths of all men. God bless you guys. Check you later. There we go. And there goes the Instagram, guys, on YouTube. Thanks so much. Like, subscribe, share, do all that cool stuff. Next time we'll have JC and Howard here. It'll be a blast. Love you guys too. I'm going to kill the video feed. Have a good week.